Welcome to Chapter 1 of Organizational Behavior. Here we're just going over the basics of organizational behavior, some research elements, some common terminology, just to get us set up and start ready for studying the rest of the term. Now, organizational behavior is a field that looks at the human side of business. Since organizations are made up of people, and people are a huge asset to any firm or corporation, we need to know as much as we can about their behavior, their tendencies, what are the best practices for having people work together to perform the best, to have the highest productivity. So this is a very important field in getting corporations to perform at their best. So the better you understand how people are motivated, what drives them, how they can work together more cooperatively, the more successful your business will be. So that's why it's important to study organizational behavior. Now, in organizations, the work setting is different between different organizations. And the nature and the type of management that's set up in these organizations are also different. So when we learn about organizational behavior, especially in this textbook, it's from a general point of view. But many of these situations that we're going to talk about, many of these research projects or case studies that we'll mention or discuss, will vary among how it's applied and to what group of people it's applied to. Now, of course, you can obviously see why organizational behavior is important. The study of human behavior outside as well as inside of organizations is a very complex, can be a highly scientific field, and because we're dealing with people, we're not just dealing about business aspects, we're also dealing with psychology and sociology. To help us, these fields will help us to better understand how an individual and group behavior and interpersonal processes all are going to affect how a business becomes successful, or in some cases unsuccessful. So we're really looking at a field that brings in knowledge from many other areas as well. Now, when someone does want to study organizational behavior, generally the one way they go about it is they write a research report. And oftentimes these research reports will be based on scientific methods to collect and analyze the data of people within an organization. And what they really want to do is they want to identify the major forces, elements, and factors that are occurring in current day organizations. And we want to be able to cite connections between independent and dependent variables, cause and effect, influences to certain situations in organizations. One such topic could be, what effect does Facebook have on employee productivity and efficiency within a company? So they could look at a study, could research, does Facebook steal time from employees at work? Or does Facebook add an additional component where employees have a different social media to know each other, feel more comfortable with each other, to be able to work better together? Does it result in overall better interpersonal relationships that translate into a more successful work environment? There's two sides to the story. Only research would really be able to shed light on, is Facebook, what contributions does Facebook have to the organizational behavior, and what detractions does it have? That's assuming the company allows people to go onto the site during working hours. Okay, so here are some different scientific research methods that can be utilized inside of organizational behavior. You have field studies where people go into real live business environments to study organizations. You could also have, on the flip side of that, laboratory studies where studies are controlled or simulated in a laboratory. You can have a case study to look at one single situation in depth, looking at it from many angles. Survey studies where people produce questionnaires to ask people organizational behavior related questions within a similar sample size population. Or you could use meta analysis, where we're using statistical tools in a pool of data to pull out and extract or look for some commonalities or some differences within the empirical data. All right. Now, here's a little multiple choice question for you. Which technique can be generalized across multiple settings? Field studies, meta-analysis, or case studies? And the answer is B, meta-analysis, because this, using a statistical pool, we can look at situation or draw results from many different empirical studies. And this is, a technique that allows researchers to generalize and apply conclusions to many different organizational behavior situations. Now, when we're talking about field studies or case studies, that's one specific organization or one specific event. The meta-analysis allows you to go above that and look at issues that can affect the entire field of organizational behavior. Now, as far as scientific thinking, it's very important that when someone does research organizational behavior, they're not just saying their own feelings or their own conclusions, that they have a methodology for collecting their data that's very systematic, that's very uniform, and they have whatever the hypothesis is that they're trying to test, that they have an explanation that's carefully deployed and tested, that can be rigorously verified, so that when someone does publish a paper in organizational behavior, there can be strong support for their assertions and their hypothesis based on the scientific protocols that they followed during the research. Otherwise, people will not give much credibility to the paper, and really it will not be published. Contingency thinking is just like you would make contingency plans. If you need to get somewhere and if your car is not available that day, you can take the train or you can take a bus. I mean, you want to look at meet the needs of many different management situations and have detailed solutions, more than one solutions or multiple solutions that you can choose from, the best fit the circumstance where it would apply. So contingency thinking is an important part of the way we seek to meet the goals of different management situations. Okay. Now, if we're talking about evidence-based management, we're looking to make decisions that are going to be based on hard facts. Rather than dangerous half-truths or maybes or speculation, we're looking through a contingency approach in which researchers identify how different situations can be understood and handled. In the time of complex globalization, for example, it is important for everyone, from managers and employees to government leaders, to understand how organizational behavior theories and concepts can be applied in many different, not just many different firms and organizations, but also many different countries and cultures as well. Some of the modern workplace trends that we're going to be looking at or talking about is how organizations have to think about their commitment to ethical behavior. If we look at even the past few years with the last great recession we had, and some of the unethical behavior within the mortgage market industry and some of the financial investment banks, some of the oil companies, when we had that oil leak in the Gulf of Mexico, excuse me. What type of commitment do individuals and organizations really have to ethical behavior if this constant stream of unethical events are occurring. How much unethical behavior is out there that isn't uncovered? Organizational behavior researchers and theorists are really, this is going to be the next big area of research, I feel. And something has to be done to really reinforce this ethical behavior within organizations, um, from the lowest employee to the top president of the company. Everybody must be encouraged to think in ethical ways and behave in an ethical manner. It's a huge subject these days. Also, leadership. How has leadership changed? How has the role of managers and leaders in organizations, so they differ, say, from the past 10, 15, or 20 years? What are the new, more successful strategies of leadership? Definitely a big trend in today's. How do people want to be managed, and what do they want to see in a leader that's going to motivate them to perform the best at work? Now, when we talk about human capital, a big push these days is teamwork. And for a lot of employers looking to hire new employees, I know from working with many students, the first question they ask is, what's your experience working on a team? Can you talk about any team projects where you were a leader or a team member, or any organizations on campus where you were part of a team? This seems to be a common question in interviewing for just about any position in any company and business. From any student I've talked to after they come back from an interview, this is one huge question that companies are asking, and not just business students, also computer science, engineering, many different disciplines. This is a big topic these days. The demise of command and control, how companies are becoming flatter, how the management structure is changing, the influence of technology on companies. We were talking about Facebook earlier. How does the internet, computers, smartphones, all this different technology that employees are utilizing today, how does that affect the workplace? Is there sort of a future shock where it's just too much technology, there's too much input from email, text messages, calendars, things of this nature? Is it as helpful as everyone thinks, or is it really overwhelming us? Another major trend: respect for new workforce. When we talk about the new workforce coming in, what are their expectations? People who are coming up into the workforce that are used to social media and multitasking and a certain level of freedom, how are they going to affect the organizations? What are their expectations? Are they going to have to be met, or will they fit into how we're currently running our companies? They call that the Facebook generation. The changing concepts of careers. Careers, when I was younger, careers were something that you had one career and it lasted a lifetime. Till today, where many people have 2 or 3 careers. I remember when they told me when I was younger, you'll probably only have 2 or 3 jobs in your whole life. Nowadays, they tell you you'll have 10 or more jobs in your whole life. So there's a changing concept of what it means, what your career is, and how you pursue it. And also sustainability, concerns for sustainability. You've seen this at the university level, where we now have programs in sustainability. No company wants to look like the evil wasting company that wastes oil and resources and isn't concerned about global warming, sustainability. This is a factor that companies, consumers and customers look for companies who they can believe in and who aren't harming the environment. And organizations have to adapt to this new sensibility of sustainability that our current climate is demanding. And it's only going to become more significant as time marches on and our resources become much more scarce. Okay. Okay, so here's some just basic terminology that we're going to be using throughout the textbook. Organization. What is an organization? Basically, it's a collection of individuals working together within a business to achieve a common purpose. Pretty simple. I think everybody has that, knows what that is. What is an organizational culture? Okay, so organizations are like different families or different. Um, they can have a different set of values and beliefs. No one set is better or worse than the other per se, but different organizations, based on the people who lead them and how they developed, have a different culture. Um, it's sort of the integrity and character of the country of the company that is riddled throughout everything the company does, and how individuals perceive the company from inside and from outside. So each company has their own sort of culture. Some cultures can be a very formal company. Everybody has the dress code is very strict, and everybody has to have a certain level of professionalism, uh, and in some companies it's much more relaxed, where the organizational culture is the dress code is very relaxed. There's some companies where you can bring your pet to work, um, bring your kids to work. I mean, each culture is vastly different. There are some companies where if you speak up to the president in a menacing or challenging tone, you're fired. And there are some organizations where it's encouraged for employees to speak up and defend their positions to their bosses and superiors. So this is something that we're going to definitely be looking at. Um, Organizational climate. And this is more of how people see the organization in terms of its management practices and policies. So the climate is changing. This is something that will change more rapidly than a culture, but the climate of some companies can become, you know, friendlier, more hostile to employees, and then back to friendlier to employees. And a lot of this, sometimes they say this organizational climate could be tied to the economy. Some organizational climates, the management practices change if there's a recession and employees are less likely to find other work. Then the company could be free to cut benefits, ask employees to work more hours, uh, rather than an environment where it's very easy for an employee to leave and get another job, and management has to be a little bit more cautious of how they treat their employees, as an example. Okay. When we talk about open systems, now what we're talking about is we're looking at how a company can obtain resources and inputs from the environment and transform them into physical goods and services that are returned to the environment as product outputs or finished goods. So everything works right. Suppliers value the organization and continue to provide needed resources. Employees value their work and infuse uh, the transformation process with their energies and intellect. Customers and clients value the organization's outputs and finished goods and products to can create a continued demand for them. So this is just what we call an open system, and it's basically the way business is done. Okay, so here's a chart on I guess, an example of this system where you have your resource inputs, information, materials, technology, facilities, money, and people. These are your resources. Now, if you put them through the transformation process, and this happens within the organization, the work of people, you have what you have in this area. You can have the purchasing agents that buy the material, the salespeople that work to sell the material, the manufacturing people who assemble the material, the managers who watch the process, the quality inspect QA people who monitor the quality, the engineers who help fix problems, design products. All the organization is taking these resources and developing them into finished goods or finished services. And then based on the consumer feedback of the customers, if they pull and buy the products, then new resources will be generated for a new set of finished goods and products to be developed. Not always the same set, maybe new products are developed along the way or product line extensions, but this is the basic flow of an organization. Okay, so when we talk about a value chain, we're talking about a list of activities that are going to result in making that finished goods or service that is going to be sold to the customer. And again, it begins with the acquisition of the inputs, buying the raw materials, continuing through the transformation, sometimes called the work in process or WIP process, and ends in the production distribution of the products and services to customers or clients. And if they're well served, they're going to the whole process is going to start over again as they demand more goods and services as they continue to be customers. So basically, a value chain. Okay, stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? These are anybody who has some sort of stake within the business. Of course, you have your employees, you have your customers, you have your clients, you have your vendors. These are all different people. You have your investors. These are all different people who have some sort of connection to the company that is going to be significant and meaningful to them. The company is providing them an opportunity or a product or in some cases money for their services, and those are all people who, or a return for the money they lent the company. These are all people who have a vested interest inside of the organization. Okay. Now, when we talk about experience, if you think about companies you have worked for or you have been a member of, and you think about, I want you to take a minute to think about their culture, the climate of the company. Did you find working for these companies constructive? Did you have good experience? Did you find that the personnel overall, people you worked with, too aggressive or too defensive? Did you find that it was difficult to work with people in this organization? Do you have any? Can you think of what they could have done better? So this is a way of just putting in context everything we talked about previously in this chapter. I want you to think about and take some time, maybe pause this recording, and just think about the companies you've worked for and how the cultures and climates are different between the different companies and how you fit in. And also, I guess you can also reflect upon how you learned from each experience you've had from these different companies to make you the employee that you are today, and who is probably a lot more savvy, have a lot stronger interpersonal skills, and knows how to facilitate a good work environment. And now you didn't just get there overnight. It's been your experience through working for many different companies and many different years of working maybe for the same company that you develop these skills and you become an asset to the highly functioning organizational behavior that you belong to. So just kind of think about that and put into context everything that we've talked about so far during this lecture. Take some time to really reinforce some of the basic things we've talked about. Okay, if you're just coming back from your reflective activity, let's talk a little bit about workforce diversity. Now, when we talk about diversity, there's many different ways people can be diverse. We have our genders, our race, ethnicities, ages, able-bodiedness, sexual orientation. So you work with a whole rainbow of different types of people, and this is looked at as a good thing, that the more different points of view, the more different experiences, it helps your company or your organization to see things from many different angles. So workforce diversity is something that is encouraged in many corporations because it's a strength. Now, in certain organizational climates and cultures, there can be, in some cases, some prejudice or disrespect for certain groups of people. And this is something that any manager needs to make sure doesn't keep reoccurring, and that for legal and for just performance reasons, the more cultural, more diversity you have in your workforce, the more strengths you have. And that's one of the things that people have said why the United States has been so strong in business and innovation and so strong in their organizations that they've produced is because they had some of the most diverse workforce or organizational people of any country due to the nature of us all being most of us not being native to this country, unless you're, even the American Indians didn't come, weren't directly born, they didn't just suddenly appear in the United States. They traveled here from continental bridges or boats. So, but that's really besides the point. I think you know what I'm getting at. That we have a pretty diverse body of peoples that formed organizations of businesses in the United States, and the strength of these different points of view and these different perspectives really helped us to have a very strong global outreach of our products and services. Okay, now some other terminology that we should be familiar with is multiculturalism, um, which is sort of deals with the understanding and respect for the diversity within the workplace. So someone who is a multicultural person and someone who um, can see the benefits of multiculturalism in an organization and how it can benefit an organization is some of the most important points in some of the later chapters of the organizational behavior. Um, Inclusion, degree at which, if it could be, something is very hard to measure, but a degree to which an organization culture respects um, and values the level of diversity inside the corporation. So if a company is very inclusive, then they're going to be very welcoming and have various policies to make everyone feel welcome and everyone part of the culture. And they found through various organizational behavior studies that you know being a workforce that supports and promotes the inclusion of many of these diversity groups gains a lot of loyalty and respect and hard job satisfaction from these people, which ultimately um, makes the corporation stronger and especially in its performance and development of new products and just makes for an overall more satisfied workforce and a more higher performing workforce according to the studies. All right. So we're going to skip this slide here. Okay. A couple other terms to talk about. When we're looking at management and leadership in organizations, the manager, what is a manager? The manager is someone who's supposed to support the work of others. Not Manager is not someone who's supposed to boss people around or delegate his work to other people. They're sort of should be looked at as a facilitator, an organizer of getting people what they need to have an organized and structured work environment so that their work can be the best it is. So a manager is almost sort of like a coach. Um, an effective manager is someone who is successful at managing people and gets them to really achieve high level performance or satisfaction within their jobs. Because not all managers, as you probably know, are successful. Okay. Task performance is specifically how well an individual, a group, a team, or a work unit, um, how well their work is. What is the quality and quantity of the work that they produce within these different units? Or it could be as an organization as a whole, but it's just breaking things down to a more specific role. Job satisfaction is pretty much what it sounds like. How you feel about your job. Are you happy with your job, your work setting, your coworkers? Do you leave work every day with a feeling of, gee, I like my job. I can't wait to go back, or I don't mind going back. You know. Okay. Okay, so the management process. This is something that, we're just going to touch upon. But basically, what are managers responsible for? Well, one thing they're definitely responsible for is planning. Who's going to do what, defining goals, um, setting up, specific objectives and actions that need to be taken. Managers also need to organize. Organizing is a big part of the management process. Creating work structures and systems, arranging resources to accomplish goals and objectives. Leading, instilling enthusiasm by communicating with others, motivating them to work hard, and maintaining good interpersonal relationships is all part of leading. And controlling, ensuring that things go well by monitoring performance of employees, taking corrective action when necessary. This is all part of what the management process does and is about. Okay, here's a graphic of the management process, sort of what I talked about: the planning, organization, leading, controlling, and this is some of what a manager has to do to ensure that things are going to go well at the company and put them back on track when they're not doing well. Okay. The All right. So here are 10 roles of effective managers. As far as if you break them up into interpersonal roles, informational roles, and decision roles, interpersonal roles, a manager is someone who is a leader, liaison between different groups, a figurehead for a department. Informationally, the manager has to monitor information, has to be a spokesperson for other for the people he manages. Um, as far as the decision role, managers need to use information that's available to make decisions, um, handle disturbances among customers to clients to employees he's working with, uh, be a negotiator of sorts. Maybe he has to negotiate for his employees for what they need or when he needs additional help. A resource allocator among the people working for them. So there are many different roles, that a manager has to take within his job. Now, a basic another basic terminology: skills and competencies. A skill is basically something that you can do well, and it's an ability you have that's going to result in something good, and something that you can do particularly well. Now, a technical skill is your ability to perform a very specific task. A human skill is being able to work with other people or work well with other people, and a conceptual skill is being able to analyze and solve complex problems. So skills can be in multiple areas. These are just to kind of put them in three separate groups. Uh, as far as intelligence, there, of course, there is, many different types of intelligence. One area that's very important to organizational behavior is emotional intelligence, where we talk about, how, and this is something a lot of people, you go to school to build your intellectual intelligence, your ability to analyze data and to research, but very little attention is often paid to the emotional intelligence. And in this area, um, sorry, I just skipped ahead there for a second. In this area, how many people are very self-aware of their actions and the actions of others? So being self-aware, you know, is a very important emotional intelligence attribute. So how many of you really understand what you're feeling at all times, your moods and emotions, and what's causing them? Self-regulation, being able to think before acting, to control your impulses, especially your being able to act to stop your bad impulses, overeating, smoking, things of that nature. Motivation, the ability to work hard, understand the benefits of working hard, to keep at it. Empathy, the ability to understand the emotions of others and to understand and comprehend the emotions that other people may be feeling in certain situations. And just overall social skill, uh, being able to talk with others and build good relationships. So this is all part of an emotional intelligence that managers and leaders definitely need to become successful. Now, back to ethical management. Um, as far as ethics and decision making, this is, as I was talking about before, more center stage now more than ever. Um, you want to have a manager that you know makes decisions in a moral manner. Um, you know, makes good ethical. You know, having high standards for ethical behavior is a personal goal. Um, you don't want managers to have, you don't want to have an amoral manager who fails to consider the ethics of decisions or the behaviors, you know, when they make them. I mean, these are definitely the worst to have is an immoral manager, someone who chooses to behave unethically. You know, you ethics are going to be a bigger part of this world because we don't have room for much more mistakes or bad behavior in this area because we're so interconnected in this world, and the actions of one company can really have results, not just the organization of a company, but now the organization of governments and their decisions and can affect not just that one country, not that just that one company, but the entire world. So this is going to be a very big topic in organizational behavior for the many decades to come. Okay. Um, so you want to have a leader who is, I mean, you you want to have someone that you can look up to, trust, and believe in as a leader. So if someone's going to have, um, they're going to have less of an impact on you if you perceive them as someone who's a liar, who's immoral, who makes selfish decisions. Um, they're not someone who you're going to want to work hard or trust. Um, the moral leadership is what generally a lot of studies have focused on gets better cooperation from employees and results because people just inherently feel like that they'll be treated fairly if the manager treats other people fairly when you witness it. Is sort of one way I would put it. I would say it. Okay. So organizational behavior for a large part is about learning about how people work together, how companies work well, um, and a good focus on this chapter is not this chapter, this whole book is the process of you learning more about yourself and about how you fit into roles at companies. And this book has a nice section of assessment exams and little quizzes in the back that can help you get a better idea about how you learn, what you think, and how you would perform within a company. Okay. All right. And of course, we always want to have a lifelong learning. We don't want to stop learning the day we graduate college. For anybody to be successful in their career, they have to have a continuing learning environment where they're always improving upon themselves. And you don't have to learn by going to school. You can also continue your learning by reading trade magazines, professional books, taking additional courses or pursuing additional degrees. This only makes you a stronger employee and a better corporate citizen. You know, okay. Experiential learning is a big part of organizational behavior, and it's about learning through experience. So, we can learn from initial experience, um, which is basically uh, in classroom exercises, projects, assignments, and cases. And we could learn a lot from reflection, which I did a little bit in the previous slides when I asked you to think about your experiences with organizations in the past. And this is just, thinking about what has been done, reflecting upon the past, and trying to draw some conclusions, learning from the past. You know what they say about history, you're destined to repeat it. Reflection is the one thing that helps to prevent that. Also, building theories, thinking about the way things work, building theories about, intuitively what you feel or think, and then, doing experimentation, trying to prove those theories, and see that some of the things that you think about, are they true? Is having a pizza party every Friday to thank employees beneficial, creating a beneficial and a higher job satisfaction from employees? I mean, that's something that you could test out by having those pizza parties on Fridays and then giving employees surveys and then measuring performance. I mean, there's a lot that can be done in this area. Okay. Okay, so that concludes our first lecture on Chapter 1. Join me next time when we'll be talking about Chapter 2, which is more about individual differences, values, and diversity. And we'll explore those topics a little bit more. I look forward to seeing you then. Take care.